Hello and welcome to Byju's Exam Prep IAS. A very warm good evening to everyone. I hope all of you are doing good. I welcome you back to today's webinar of mains based current affairs for GS1 and GS2. Good evening, everyone. I hope all of you are doing good. We'll wait for a couple of minutes. Let others also join in the class and then we will begin. Thank you so much. Good evening, good evening, good evening, good evening. I'm good. Thank you so much for asking. Just give me a moment. We'll begin in just a moment. Just a moment, okay? Thank you so much. Good evening, good evening, good evening. Yes, Shivani, the class is running, don't worry. I see a lot of you have a question about your prelims exam as well. I know this is your first mains based session after the prelims examination took place. I know you have a lot of questions on that. We'll take some of the question and discussion about your prelims exam as well. Don't worry. Don't worry. We'll be discussing that as well. Okay, a lot of you want the discussion to first your prelims exam. Good evening, good evening, good evening, good evening, everyone. Perfect. Okay. Okay. So I think a lot of you actually want or are more interested in discussing first about the prelims examination and then going ahead. So let's take just a couple of minutes about the prelims examination. Let's discuss what that was, your expectation, etc., and then we'll go ahead. Okay. So let's first discuss about the prelims exam. A lot of you might have given the prelims examination that took place on Sunday. Many of you may not have. Many of you are hoping to do that next year. The general consensus, and I'm sure everyone will agree to this, was that it was a very unconventional paper, a difficult paper, not something that many people had expected. Let me just give you my 2 cents about the paper and then we'll go ahead. Okay. Um, Rather than asking me, I'm getting this score, that score, let me first tell you what I feel about the exam, and then maybe you can take a call on your own. So basically, the options that you got this time around were obviously much more trickier as compared to what you usually get. In most of the questions, there was no option to eliminate anything. You got option in a very incorrect manner. However, I hope that all of you will agree to me. It was not really the questions that were tricky, it was the options that were trickier. Would you agree to that? If you just see the question, for example, and not see the options, the questions themselves were not that tricky. They were as they always have been. So, no surprise in the question as such. The surprising part was the options, right? I think all of you would agree to that. The option part was tricky, not the question part. Okay. Now that all of us agree to that, let's move on. So, what I mean to say is, since the questions were not as such on the unexpected lines, it was just the option formation that was on the unexpected lines. What I mean to say is, the UPSC exam is still not something that is beyond your reach. Just that the only difference that starts from now onwards is now you have to be more sure of the answer before choosing your option. That is the only difference. Earlier you were able to eliminate, now you're not able to eliminate. The only difference is that you would have been able to eliminate a few, now you can't eliminate those. Now also you would be able to answer. The only difference is now you have to be absolutely sure of each and every statement. I hope all of you will agree with this part, right? That you would not really be stumped with the question, it's just about the options. And the options also are formed in such a way that if you're absolutely sure of every statement, you will be able to get that. Number one. Okay. Now let me talk about something else. I know it was a very unconventional paper, it was a pretty tough paper. So, if, for example, you think that it was a tough paper, please understand something. The good part about UPSC is if it's a tough paper, it's a tough paper for everyone. If it's an easy paper, it's an easy paper for everyone. Are you understanding this? If you think it was a tough paper, then it was a tough paper for each and everyone and not just you. And if it would have been an easy paper, it would have been an easy paper for each and everyone and not just you. Meaning that the relative cutoff doesn't really have that big of a difference. For example, if it is hard for you, it was hard for everyone. So cutoff will automatically become lower. You don't have to worry about that. In those years where the question paper is considerably easier, the cutoff automatically goes high. So please don't worry about that part. Now, coming to what exactly have you been asking? Many people have been asking, so this is my score. Will I qualify? Will I not qualify? Let me tell you something. Every single answer, again, please listen to this very carefully. Every single answer key that you might have seen, you might have copied your marks from that, no matter what answer key that you see, will always have one or two differences as compared to the UPSC answer key. No matter which answer key, and I'm talking about all of those. Each and every answer key will have one or 2 points of difference with the eventual UPSC answer key. So please understand that. That is why my suggestion would be, if in any of the answer key, please listen to this carefully. My suggestion is, if in any of the answer key you are getting 75 or more than 75 in the general category, my suggestion would be to continue your studying routine without thinking about it right now. The good part is, because the UPSC now doesn't take a lot of time in declaring the result. The prelims result usually these days it comes in within 20 days. So it's just about 2 more weeks and the UPSC prelims result will be out. So what I am suggesting is, for the next 20 days, keep on studying the way you were, because if you don't study for these 20 days and eventually you do clear the prelims, you will be in a very bad position as compared to if you study for 20 days and if you don't clear. Please understand, in these 20 days, if you don't study and then you clear, you will be in a very, very tough situation. But if you keep on studying and even then you, let's say, don't clear, you don't have anything to lose at least, right? So my suggestion would be, if any answer key, wherever answer key, whichever that you have checked is giving you over 75, please carry on with your preparation. It's just a matter of 2 more weeks. Let's see what the result comes in. No one can be assured of what the result would be. My instinct, those who are asking, my instinct is usually it should be lower than last year's cutoff. Last year's cutoff for general category was 88. The vacancies are also slightly more. So since the last year cutoff was 88, my expectation would be 85 for general category, and you can make assumptions for other categories as well. But again, please understand always, if it's a tough paper for you, it's a tough paper for everyone. If it's an easy paper for you, it's an easy paper for each and everyone. So please don't think about that. Let the result come out. The result, usually UPSC has been given the result within 20 days of the prelims exam. Prelims was on 28th of May. So you can expect the result also to come out before, I would say, 18th of June in any case. So you will be able to get that. Okay, having said that, having discussed the prelims thing that all of you wanted, let's now go ahead and let's see what is our agenda for the day today. Now, keeping in mind the mains examination, we are beginning the mains test series starting from the 4th of June. This mains test series gives you a lot of time, and you get a chance to actually prepare your mains answer writing skills, upgrade them, get your copies checked by the experts, get valuable feedback as well. This mains test series, which is for all of you, it will have a total of 15 tests, 10 modular and 5 full length tests. Please make sure that you give all these tests. You can see all the other details on the Byju's Exam Prep app about this mains test series. Okay, let's now come back to what are the topics that we have taken up for today's discussion. First, we'll be discussing about the immunity of the President of India. Why are we discussing this? Because recently there's a very interesting case that has come up where the government of India has said, because the government has signed a contract in the name of the President of India, and because President of India has immunity, the government says they also should have complete immunity from that contract. So Supreme Court has to decide whether immunity for president is equal to immunity for the government also if the contract is signed in the name of the president. That is the first topic we'll take up. Second topic, we'll be discussing the right to default bail. Something interesting has happened here. The Supreme Court a few weeks back gave a decision about how the bail should be given. Now they have taken back their decision, so we'll be discussing what that is. Then we'll be discussing the G7 summit. The G7 summit recently held at Hiroshima in Japan. The significance of that summit. India also, as you know, was a participant in this summit. What happened there? What is the G7 talking about? Then we'll be discussing about the recusal of judges. This again is in the news. Why do the judges recuse? What is the procedure of recusal of judges from any specific case in the Supreme Court or High Court? And then in the end, we have taken up the Kurukshetra and the Yojana magazine. From Kurukshetra, we'll be discussing the role of rural crafts in building more livelihood. And then we'll be discussing the potential of India's EdTech sector. EdTech is the reason why you and me have met in life. So I'm very thankful to EdTech. Otherwise, I would not have known any of you. Okay, so let's begin with the first one. The first topic that we have at our hands is the immunity for the President of India. Now, I'm sure all of you have read Indian polity. And in Indian polity, all of you would have read about the executive powers of the President of India. One of the executive powers of the President of India that we read is all the decisions of the government of India are taken in the name of the President of India. All the official contracts of the government are usually in the name of the President of India only. Now, what has happened is the government of India is saying, since the President of India has immunity, the government also can have the same immunity for a contract that has been signed in the name of the President. Let me tell you in simple terms what is the case all about, what has happened. Okay. So what has happened is there is a weapon manufacturing company. Okay. There is a company that makes weapons, that makes pistols. This company that makes pistols had signed a contract with the government of India about supply of some 31,000 or so pistols. Now, what happened was, after this contract was signed, under the contract, they also had to appoint an arbitrator. The contract said that an arbitrator has to be appointed. Arbitrator means a person, a mediator, who will come in between when there is any dispute between the two parties. Now, what happened was, the problem is about who will be the arbitrator and who will appoint the arbitrator. The government of India wanted one of their secretaries, one of the secretaries of the government of India, one of the IAS officers of the government of India to be the arbitrator. On the other hand, this company said, how is this possible? If one party is the government, other party is the company Glock, then how can be the arbitrator someone who is working for the government of India? If someone is working for the government of India, how can that person be an arbitrator in any contract where government of India is one party? As simple as that. So the question is about the appointment of the arbitrator. This case went to the Supreme Court. In the Supreme Court, this company called Glock Asia Pacific Limited, which manufactures pistol, this company went to the Supreme Court saying that the arbitrator who has to be appointed between the government and this company should be a neutral person, should not be an employee of the government of India. Government of India said, no, 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 no. we cannot be challenged, or this contract cannot be challenged in the court. Why? Because government said that they also have immunity. The reason being, the government is saying this contract is signed or is on the name of the President of India. President has immunity, government also has immunity. So government is saying that this case cannot go to the Supreme Court. This is the entire issue all about. The contract has been signed. Problem is about the arbitrator, the negotiator, the mediator who will come in between wherever there is a problem. Government wants the arbitrator to be their secretary. The company says, how can it be your secretary? The person who is working for the government of India cannot really be an arbitrator in this case only. To understand this, there are two articles of the Indian Constitution that you should know. Article 298 and Article 299. Let's see what these two are. Article number 298 says, center and the state governments have the power to carry trade, business, acquire, dispose property, and make contracts for any purpose. So Article 298 gives the power to the government at the center and at the state to enter into certain contracts. Article 299, which is at the center of this entire story, says that, or tells the manner in which how contracts will be made. Article 299 tells us the conditions of such contracts, how the contracts can be made, and what has to be kept in mind. It says, Article 299 says, all contracts made in the exercise of the executive power of the Union have to be in the name of the President of India. On the other hand, any contract made on the name or by the state government has to be in the name of the governor of the state. Also, the contract which is not under Article 299 will not be valid. In simple terms, any contract that the government of India or government of a state is making, it has to abide by the conditions given under Article 299. The Article 299 also says, neither the president nor the governor can be personally held liable to such contracts. Now, please try and understand this. You will read in Indian polity, if you have not read this so far, the President of India is not personally liable for anything that he or she does. I'll give you an example. Okay, let's take a simple example. You all know that the President of India does not act on his or her own discretion. Whatever the President of India does, whatever the order the President gives, whatever the President suggests, it is all based on the advice of the Council of Ministers. Let's assume the Council of Ministers gave an advice to the President of India. The advice can be anything: to pass an ordinance, to let's say pardon anyone who has been given death sentence. When the President acts on the advice of the Council of Ministers, if you want to challenge that decision in the court, you cannot challenge the President personally. The challenge has to be made to the Council of Ministers because they are the ones who had actually given the advice to the President of India. Similarly, over here also, although the contract is in the name of the President of India, if something wrong happens in the contract, President of India is not personally liable for such contracts. You cannot go ahead and you can go to the court and say, no, 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 this is the President of India that I'm fighting a case against. That is not allowed. What is the case? As I said, the case is about this company, Glock Asia Pacific. They had to supply 31,000 something pistols to the government of India. The dispute was about who will be the arbitrator in such cases. The details of the case as such are not really important for you. What's important for you is the significance of Article 298 and Article 299. Glock wanted a Delhi High Court judge, retired judge, to act as the arbitrator, wherever the government, on the other hand, wanted one of their secretaries to act as their arbitrator. And this is why this issue has now gone to the Supreme Court of India. What has the court said? The court in this case has taken the side of the Glock company, not the government of India. The court has said, just if immunity is given to the President of India, President is not personally liable in the court, but the government can still be challenged. And this is what has happened. That is how the Supreme Court has appointed an arbitrator who is a retired Supreme Court judge. The Supreme Court has said that former Supreme Court judge, Justice Indu Malhotra, she was anyways a very famous arbitrator. She will be the sole arbitrator to adjudicate upon disputes in this case. The Supreme Court said Article 299 does not give the government overall immunity. This immunity is only for the personal behalf of the President of India. Also, the Supreme Court had said these are the requirements that every government contract has to fulfill. Every government contract has to be in the name of the president or the governor. Also, so this language is of the British era, that the contract had to be made on the name of governor, governor general. This has now been replaced by governor or the president of India. It must be executed in writing, and the execution must be of such high persons in the manner as the governor general may direct. This is what the contracts had to be at the time of the British era. And the British laws have still been passed on similar to this. Even in this case, the government of India's contracts are in the name of the President of India, while the government of states contracts are made in the name of the governor, but both of these can still be challenged in the court even today. Now, since the question or the topic is mostly about the immunity of the president, let's also discuss what exactly is the immunity of the President of India. Now, the President of India, since he or she sits at the topmost position at the order of precedence, the President of India and the governor of the state have similar immunities. What is the immunity? During their tenure, there cannot be any criminal charges against the governor or the President of India. Doesn't matter what they do, doesn't matter what they do not do. There cannot be any criminal proceedings against the President of India during his or her tenure. On the other hand, if there is a civil offense in the personal capacity of the President, let me give you an example. Let's say the President of India wrote a check to his friend and the check bounced. So it's a civil offense in the personal capacity of the President. So if there is a civil offense in the personal capacity of the President, there can be proceedings against the President after giving a 2-month notice period. But even with such proceedings, the President cannot be sent to jail. This is not allowed. The President has complete immunity. Please do remember, this immunity is only during the tenure of the President. Once the tenure of the President ends, after that, these cases can come up. It is only during the tenure of the President and not after the tenure ends. Okay? This is what the immunity of the President is like. Here is a practice question from this topic. President's immunity can't be interpreted as a violation of right to equality in India. Elaborate. Before I move on, I'll take up a few questions quickly. Amir, I have already told about the expected cutoff. General category 85 lump sum. Then I have a question. What do you mean by personal capacity? See, understand this. The President of India, when he or she takes a decision for the government or for government purposes, that's his professional capacity. Personal capacity means when he's doing something apart from the government. As I said, for example, if the President of India signs a check and gives it to the friend, that will be the personal capacity. Simple. Sahil is saying, what is arbitrator? Sahil, arbitrator means someone who comes in between the two parties to negotiate. If two people have a problem, rather than going to the court, you go to the arbitrator. They would come in and they would ensure that issue is resolved. Shavik is saying, suggestion for 2024 prelims. Keep studying the way you are. I don't think there is anything that needs to be changed. Just that now you have to be extra sure about the questions before you answer. As simple as that. Nothing more than that. Then I have a question from Shambhu. Shambhu is saying immunity means that you have certain special privileges. For example, you cannot be arrested, or let's say you cannot be sent to jail, etc. Then I have a question from Vilapil. Can't they form a panel of 2 arbitrators? It depends on the contract, what kind of a contract it is. If the contract says that there will be a panel of arbitrators, they can. If the panel says or the contract says that there will be only one single arbitrator, then there will be one single arbitrator. Simple. Then I have a question from Prajwal. Prajwal saying, very confused regarding current affairs. Should I make notes from Hindu analysis or weekly current affairs, or only study monthly magazines? I would not suggest you to make your notes from the scratch. There is so much material available ready made that don't think that it makes a lot of sense to spend time in making your own personal notes. Even for the Hindu analysis, you will get the PPTs. You can download those from the YouTube channel. The monthly current affair magazine, anyways, made like that. It includes most of the things. I don't think it makes a lot of sense to make your own current affairs. I'm coming to this question, Ria. I'm coming to this question. Okay. Okay, let's come to what this question is. So the question is, president's immunity can't be interpreted as a violation of right to equality. Now, if you actually go back to article number 14, article 14 of the Indian Constitution talks to you about the right to equality, people to be treated equally in the eyes of the law. In simple terms, article 14 says that everyone should be treated equally in the eyes of the law. However, the problem is there are always certain exceptions. Like the President of India, in this case, for example, has an exception. You and me, we can be punished for a certain crime. The President of India will not be punished for that crime. That is not really an exception. That's not really a violation of right to equality. The reason why president, governors, the reason why they have an immunity is because the concept of equality is that equals have to be treated equally and unequals have to be treated unequally. As simple as that. So when you say the president is given certain exceptions, it's not a violation of right to equality. It's just because the president is not equal to the others. That is what you have to explain here. Ilma is saying, how can the government claim that a particular case cannot be filed in the court? That is what I have been explaining for the last 30 minutes. Government says the contract is in the name of the president. President has the immunity, so it cannot be challenged in the court. Simple. Then Abhilash is saying Article 298 clearly says government appoint the arbitrator. So Supreme Court appoint how this is overreaching of Supreme Court? No. No, Article 298 doesn't say the government alone will appoint the arbitrator. It depends on the contract, what the contract says, who will appoint the arbitrator. Anyways, whenever there's a contract between the two parties, it's never that one party can appoint the arbitrator. The entire concept of arbitrator is it has to be appointed by both. Not sure how many topics will we be able to complete if I get so many questions from each and every topic, but depends on you. Then I have a question from Ilma. If any contract made by the state to be under the name of the governor or president, they have any role in that? No. It is a part of their executive powers. Prashant says, does this type of case will affect FDI? These small little cases happen in every country. It's not that just because of this the FDI will be affected. So you don't have to worry. Plus, FDI is mostly about investing in India. This company is just about selling pistols in India, not really about investing in India. Vilapal, I've already answered your question about two arbitrators or not. As I said, it depends on what the contract is about. Okay. If with your permission, can we go ahead? Or do you want me to spend more time in these questions only? Okay. Thank you. Let's go ahead then. The second question, the second topic that we have taken up that was in the news once again was about the right to default bail. I'm very sure all of you have at least heard about what exactly is a bail, right? Bail means when you have been arrested or when you are under the police custody, you apply for a bail that I have to go out. The police is still investigating. Now, why is it in the news? What happened here? Let's try and understand this. So basically, let's assume that police thinks that you have committed a crime. Listen to this very carefully. This can be slightly tricky. Please understand this. So what happens is, let's assume that police thinks that you have committed a crime. Okay. And you will be arrested. Now, depending upon the crime, the police will get certain number of days to file the charge sheet. Please understand this carefully. Depending upon what the crime is, the police will get certain days to file the charge sheet depending upon the crime. Let's assume the crime is of a murder. Then the charge sheet time may be 60 days to be given to the police. Let's say there's some other crime and then it would be given 90 days. Depending upon what the crime is, the police has to be given certain number of days. Now, what exactly is a charge sheet? Charge sheet is a police report submitted to the judge where the police submits all the evidences that these are the charges we have put on this person. He has committed this, and this crime. These are the evidences that we have. So this is what a charge sheet is. That you tell exactly what exactly are the charges that you have put on the person, and after that, what exactly are the actions that the police wants to be taken. Now, what happens is, as I said, police gets, let's say, 60 days to file the charge sheet. Now, what happens is, let's assume the police does not file the charge sheet in 60 days. Let's just assume that the police is not able to file the charge sheet in 60 days. What happens then? If the police cannot file the charge sheet in the limited time that is given to them, that means the person has a right to get the bail, because you can't put the person unlimited for the unlimited time in the prison because the police is not abiding by the time limit. So if the police cannot file the charge sheet within the set time period, the person is given the bail. Now, what happens in this case? Usually, police has found a loophole here. What is the loophole? The loophole here is, because the police knows they have a 60-day time period. So before 60 days, even if they have not completed the investigation, before 60 days, they just file an incomplete random charge sheet. The charge sheet that they file, because they know that they have to file it within 60 days, otherwise the person will go out on bail. What the police does is they just randomly file any charge sheet, even if it is incomplete, so that they can tell the court that, see, at least we have filed this charge sheet. Now we are working on some other version of charge sheet, but till then let the person be in the jail. This is what the police does, that the time limit that they have been given, so that they can actually be within that time limit, what they do is they file the charge sheet within the specific time period so that they can get more time. What happened was, a few weeks back, on 26th of April, the Supreme Court said that this practice of police is illegal. On 26th of April, the police had said, or the government had said, the Supreme Court said that if there are wrong charge sheets filed, if there are incomplete charge sheets filed, then the person should get the right to bail immediately. This is what happened on 26th of April. Let me repeat what I said. 26th of April, the Supreme Court said, if in case the police files an incomplete charge sheet, if in case the police does not file the proper charge sheet, in that case, the person should have the right to bail. Now, when this order came in on the 26th of April, government did not like it. ED, that is the Enforcement Directorate, they also did not like it. They rushed to the Supreme Court, requesting the Supreme Court to take back the order. They said to Supreme Court, please don't do this. This will not really be in the interest of justice. This will force us to work in improper manner. We'll have to work very fast. Can you please reverse your judgment? This is what the Supreme Court has done now. Supreme Court has reversed its 26th April judgment. The Supreme Court has reversed the 26th April judgment, and the Supreme Court has again said that, okay, even if incomplete charge sheet is filed, even then the court should not give the bail. This is why the topic is in the news. Again, the Supreme Court on 26th of April had asked the lower courts that if incomplete charge sheets are filed, you should give default bail. And as you know, by law, by Article 141, any law made by the Supreme Court is binding on all the courts within the country. Within the country, whichever court is working, whatever the Supreme Court say, that becomes a law for that court. So if the Supreme Court on 26th of April had said that you should give bail to incomplete charge sheet, that had become a law. Now they have taken this judgment back. Now they have said, okay, we accept what the ED is saying, we accept what the Enforcement Directorate is saying. We will give more time to the enforcement agencies. We are taking back our order. The Supreme Court has again said to the lower courts that don't give default bail just because of this. The right to default bail, Supreme Court has said earlier in 26th April that it is a part of fundamental rights. But now the Supreme Court has said that no, this should not be given accordingly. As I said, the Enforcement Directorate, ED, had moved an application against the Supreme Court judgment. In the Ritu Chhabaria case, this was a 26th April judgment. The ED had said that we do not really want this kind of a judgment to go ahead because it will harm our working, and that is what the Supreme Court had said. Now, there are different types of bails that you usually hear about. Usually, there are three types of bails. There's something called the regular bail, there's interim bail, and then there's anticipatory bail. So basically, bail means that let's say you are in the jail and the investigation is still going on, the crime has not really been proven. In that case, when you apply for a bail, what you mean to say is, let the police investigate the matter. If I am held guilty, then you can arrest me. But since till now I am not held guilty, I should be let free. This is what a bail is. Regular bail is, as I said, you are in the police custody, you go to the court says yes, that yes, we are allowing you to go out. This is regular bail. Then we also have something called the interim bail. Now, what exactly is the interim bail? In simple terms, the interim bail is the court says we are investigating whether or not you should get the bail or not till the time we make the final decision. The court says we are still investigating all of this. Till the time that we make the final decision, we allow you to go out on the bail. This is called an interim bail. Till the time that the final decision is taken, you can go out. That is how the interim bail works. Then there is something called anticipatory bail. Anticipatory bail means you get a bail even before your arrest, meaning that you anticipate, you expect that you may be arrested. So before your arrest happens, you go to the court and you ask the court that I want an anticipatory bail because I think I will be arrested. That is how the anticipatory bail works. Anticipatory bail means you are expecting that the police might come and arrest you, and you apply for bail before that happening. This is called the anticipatory bail. Bails and how the bails will be given, all of this is given in the Criminal Procedure Code of 1973 called the CRPC. For the UPSC examination, you don't have to read the CRPC, don't worry. You just have to focus on the Constitution. You don't have to focus on the CRPC as such. This is a practice question you might expect from this part. Bail is the rule while jail is an exception. Comment. Let me take up from all those comments that you have sent to me. Nitesh is saying, how can we connect immunity to the right to equality? Nitesh, because right to equality, article number 14, an exception to that is president's immunity. That is the connection. If you read article number 14, an exception to this is the right, the president's immunity and the governor's immunity. Then I have a question. If the president does something in the office, can the case be filed after the term is over? Yes, Mithun, you can file a case after a term is over. Guys, I've discussed a lot about the prelims examination in the beginning. If you joined in late, please, I'm sorry, but please don't ask question about the prelims exam now. I've given enough time to prelims exam and the discussion, the cutoff, etc. So whatever question you have about prelims examination, you can see the recorded version. If you did not join on time, I'm sorry. Chaitanya saying, should I take printouts or make notes? Your choice. I can't ask you what to make for lunch or dinner, right? So it's a personal choice. See, whatever you learn better from. If you think that while writing you learn better, you want to write in your own language, absolutely go ahead. If you want to save time, go ahead with the printouts. Entirely up to you. There is no one single way. It depends on how you read and what's your style of reading. Then Ilma is saying, can a private company make pistols and weapons? Yes, we have private companies making weapons. Yes, just like you need a medical store license, just like you need a license for other things, you need a license to open up that company also. But yes, private companies can make weapons. They do make weapons. Many companies that are making weapons these days. Niharika is saying default bail is given by Chief Justice of India. No, 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 no. The bail is not given by Chief Justice of India. Bail is given by the judges. It doesn't have to be Chief Justice of India only. Then I have a question from Sonam. Sometimes a person get bail without filing charge sheet. How? Sonam, that is what I am saying. Na? If charge sheet has not been filed within the given time period, then the person has a right to bail. This is what I'm saying. If the police has to file the charge sheet within, let's say, 60 90 days, if they don't file it, then the person gets bail. Simple. Then I have a question from Vipin. Is this not an overpowering of CJI? Vipin, I'm not sure what you're referring to. You'll have to ask your question properly. Then I have a question from Roshni. At the end of topic 2, please summarize topic 2 again. Roshni, first accept. Did you come late to the class or not? Then maybe I'll think whether I have to summarize the topic again or not. Then I have a question from Tehreem. Tehreem is saying difference between interim bail and anticipatory bail. Tehreem, anticipatory bail is given when the arrest has not happened. You are anticipating that the arrest will happen. Interim bail means that you are in the jail, you have submitted documents for a bail. The court is saying, okay, we are deciding on the bail. It will take some time. There are a lot of documents that we have to go through. Before we take a final decision, we are giving you bail for some days. That is called interim bail. That, okay, you go out, but we are still making a final decision whether you should get the bail or not. Okay. Um, okay, let's come to this question. A lot of people are asking about this question. Let's come to this question. Now, these kind of questions, when you see there is a quote, the quote is bail is the rule, jail is an exception comment. Now, there are a lot of ways in which you can approach such a question. If something related to this has happened recently, then that can be a good way to answer your question. I'll give you an idea, for example. So, what happened was the Constitution Day of India, 26th of November, the last Constitution Day of India, that is 26th of November 2022. What happened was Supreme Court of India had organized an event where the President of India went, President of India made a big speech. The theme of the speech of the President of India on 26th of November was she was concerned that our prisons in India are overflowing, and she had said that bail should be given easier to people as compared to what it is now. That is why it was in the news, where she said that bail reforms have to be done, people should be given bail more easily. So when some kind of a topic like this is in the news, this can be a good beginning point to such a question. For example, you can say in the beginning that just in the Constitution Day speech, the President of India remarked that the bail reforms in India are a high priority because the prisons in India are overflowing. This can be a beginning to you. Or you can also say that this is a very famous quote by former Supreme Court Judge Justice P.N. Bhagwati, who was of the view that bail should be given, or denying bail should only be done for very solid or very exceptional reasons. And then you can talk about, if the topic is in the news, what are the problems with this rule. For example, the requirement of this rule in India is because of the fact that prisons in India are overflowing. We have many more people in the prisons as compared to what the capacity of the prisons is. Also, jails are only meant for those people for on whom the crime has been proven and not whom on which the crime is still being processed or the case is still going on. Those are the kind of facts that you have to mention over here. I'll take, then I have a question. Difference between FIR and charge sheet. FIR, when you go to the police station, when you have to register a complaint, that will be FIR. Charge sheet is what police files in the court. What police actually tells the judges that, see, this is what we have investigated, these are the charges. Charge sheet is between the police and the court. FIR is between the complainant, that is you, and the police. Then I have a question from Misbah. Difference between review petition and recall. These are two separate things. You are comparing apples, not oranges, apples and elephants. Review petition, review petition means asking the Supreme Court to review its own judgment, asking the Supreme Court to look into its own judgments once again. Recall means to bring something back. I'll take one. Okay, I'll take one more question very quickly. So there's a lot of questions about bailable versus non-bailable. Please understand this. There are some bailable offenses and then there are certain non-bailable offenses. Now, what is the difference between the two? Bailable offense means that when you are arrested by the police, it is your right to get the bail. That is a bailable offense. So again, bailable offense means that you have the right, you ask for a bail and you will get it. You just submit whatever documents are required. If you submit those documents, you will not be denied bail. This is called a bailable offense. Now, non-bailable offense is where many people have a lot of confusion. Please understand this. Many people think that non-bailable offense means the bail will not be given. No, that is not true. Non-bailable offense means it is not your right to get the bail. The magistrate will decide whether the bail has to be given or not. Based on your conduct, based on the case, the magistrate will take a call whether the bail has to be given or will not be given. So non-bailable offense doesn't mean the bail will not be given. It just means that now you are not sure of the bail. Difference. Please don't think that non-bailable offenses means the bail will not be given. That is not true. With your permission, should we go ahead? Kishan, I will answer your question on one condition. The condition is you will stop copy pasting other questions. Okay. If it has been answered by the SME already, I'll answer this once, but please don't copy because this is unfair to others. You're hiding others' places, right? So one question that Kishan has is, why not rather than arbitrator we shift to additional dispute redressal mechanism? See, understand something. When two parties make a contract, the two parties decide how will their issues be resolved. For example, if you and I make a contract, okay, for anything, that I will complete your syllabus in 50 days or whatever. In our contract, you and me, we will decide if I don't complete within 50 days and what will happen. It's between you and me, right? We can decide either we go to the arbitrator, we can decide either we'll go to a judge, we will decide either we'll do a cost or we'll do a coin toss or whatever. So, how a dispute will be resolved is decided when the two parties make the contract. Those contracts are only made when both the parties agree. So just because the government of India wants a dispute to be resolved in a certain manner doesn't mean it will be resolved like that. It has to be acceptable to the other party also while signing the contract. So your assumption that we should switch to this manner, we should switch to that manner, it will not work just from the side of the government. I hope you understand this. A contract is a two parties coming together. So unless both the parties agree how to resolve the case or how to resolve the dispute, it will not work. Okay, let's move ahead then. The next topic that we wanted to take up is about the G7 summit that recently took place in Hiroshima in Japan. Now, G7, the group of seven richest or the most developed countries in the world, it doesn't have India, but India did participate as a special invitee. Our Prime Minister was participating in the G7 summit. Now, the G7 summit is a very interesting summit, and what happened also was pretty interesting. It took place in Japan. It used to be G8, by the way, a few years back. Russia also used to be a part of it. Russia moved out, it's now G7. And the interesting part is G8, which used to be earlier, including Russia. It is not because of the Ukraine Russia war that Russia was moved out. It was that Russia, if you remember earlier, Russia had attacked Crimea. Remember, Crimea was a part of Ukraine. In 2014, Russia had taken away Crimea. At that point of time, Russia was removed from G8 and it became G7. So it's still G7 right now. The letter G means group. So G7 means group of 7, G8 is group of 8, G20 is group of 20. So basically, this is how the groups are. So this is G7, it's Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, UK, and the US. G8, there would be Russia also. And then G20 would have all these other countries, including India as well. Now, India, as I said, was invited as a special invitee to take part in the G7 summit that just took place in Japan. Now, G7 is a pretty interesting organization. Some of the richest nations in the world are members, some of the most developed countries in the world are members. So they decide on the agenda, they decide on what are the policies that they are working towards. The interesting part is, what did the G7 focus on this year? This year, the focus of the G7 was on the climate change discussions. Now, climate change, as you know, is a very important part of the global debate right now. Every country claims to be working in the interest of climate. Every country claims to be switching to cleaner energy, but somehow we are still not able to ensure that we meet the target. Nations around the world have been thinking that 1.5 degrees Celsius should be the maximum increase in the global temperature as compared to pre-industrial revolution era. But the problem is, as per multiple reports that have recently come out, in the next 4 years, the world will go beyond 1.5 degree very, very easily. Now, the problem is, who is to blame, who is not to blame, how exactly is the situation right now? Now, the G7 wants the entire world to cut down their emissions. They want the entire world to reach their global peak by 2025, meaning that G20 wants that after 20, sorry, G7 wants that after 2025, total emission should reduce. It should not increase. That is what they are thinking. But that will not happen for most countries, including China, including India. Most developing countries, which are still developing right now, they are increasing their emissions. But the G7 wants the global emission to reduce after 2025. Not just this, they think that if all countries fulfill their existing commitments, the commitment that they have made, the emissions in 2030 would still be 11% higher than 2010. The G7 also warned that fossil fuels should actually end. I'll tell you a very interesting incident. Listen to this very carefully. I know all of you love typing, as I can see here in the chat. I know typing has its own fun, but I would advise you to listen to me rather than typing, because see, you paid to listen, right? So I'll tell you a very interesting incident what happened. This incident is about Germany. So what happened was, and again, I'm not criticizing Germany or something, it's just a fact, it's an interesting story. So what happened was, Germany regards itself as a leader of Europe. Germany is the biggest European economy, the richest European economy, also the most strongest. So they think that they have to set a role model for everyone. So what Germany did was, Germany had basically shut down all its coal power plants, etc. They have also been trying to shut down as many of these non-renewable fossil fuels. So what Germany did was, a few years back, Germany had told South Africa that you should not burn coal. We will give you money in return. You should not burn coal. Rather than coal, you should actually go towards renewable energy. And they gave some millions of rupees to South Africa for that. South Africa said, okay, we'll switch to some other form of energy. We will not go ahead with coal burning. Now, what happened? Germany is dependent on Russia for its oil mainly. When the Ukraine Russia war started, Germany did not get oil, did not get gas from Russia. They had to boycott that. Germany had so little oil and gas, and they were so short of oil and gas, that Germany had to import coal from South Africa, the same country to which they were actually giving money not to use coal. So Germany is now paying South Africa to give them coal. They earlier paid them not to use coal, and now they are actually buying coal. So the situation keeps on changing. It's good and it's easy to give sermons to other countries. You should not do this, you should not do that. But it's the most difficult when it comes to you. Everyone knows honesty is the best policy. Everyone can give a sermon. Everyone can tell you, oh, you should wake up at 4 a.m., you should sleep on time at 9 p.m., you should have dinner by 7 p.m. But you all know giving sermon is a very easy part of it. But to implement this is actually very, very, very difficult. So, what the G7 are doing right now is pretty similar to that. G7 is saying that we should end the use of fossil fuel. Why? Because they are advanced, they have earned all their money, they have polluted the entire world, and now they are sitting on top of all the pile of all this, all this wastage that they have given to the world, and now they want the entire world to stop using fossil fuels because they think that these are bad now. Fossil fuels were not bad when they were using it, but just because now they have other technology, so it becomes bad. That's what happened, right? Then they want the net zero target also to be much, much more aggressive. They want that net zero target should be by 2050. Every country in the world should try and achieve net zero by 2050. Net zero means that your total emissions should be net zero. The problem is India's net zero target is 2070, China is 2060, but these other nations, the G7 wants the entire world to make targets of 2050. However, the problem is making these commitments is very easy. The challenging part is now to actually implement this. There are many challenges to this. First, insufficient action and inconsistency. See, whatever promises that the countries make, for example, countries have made a promise of net zero. Like India has made a net zero promise by 2070. These are not binding. Any promise that we make are not binding. So if you make a promise, I will cut down on emissions, I will do this and that, and if you don't do that, nothing will happen. There's no charge on you. So these are promises that are not binding. Then there's also a problem of something called greenwashing. I think we did discuss about this a few months back. Have you read about this greenwashing? Rahul, 2050. What is greenwashing? Greenwashing basically means that you make a commitment and you tell the world, picture this, that we have been working very, very hard to cut down on the emissions, we are doing this and that, but in reality, you are not being able to do that. You are just presenting a false picture. So many countries are doing that as well, making a false picture, making false claims that we are doing this and that, but there's nothing that is happening in reality. Then the problem with finance support. See, when you are rich, you can give sermons very easily because it doesn't really cost any money. You can tell people that you should not do this, you should not do that. But the problem is going ahead and adopting renewable sources of energy is very expensive. Solar used to be very expensive about 10-15 years back when it first started. Now solar energy has become very cheap, much cheaper as compared to what it used to be. But even today, other renewable sources of energy are not very cheap. We keep on talking about green hydrogen, green hydrogen. There were a couple of questions also about green hydrogen in the prelims exams. But the cost of manufacturing green hydrogen is not very cheap. It's a very expensive fuel. So how do you bring down the cost at the end of the day? Because people have to bear the cost for going to renewable energy. The rich countries are not willing to do that. The rich countries are not willing to give as much money as they should to the poor countries. So there's lack of financial support as well. Then continued reliance on fossil fuel. See, the reality is we can talk a lot about solar, wind, nuclear. All that is good talk on paper. But in reality, most of India's power still comes from coal. That is a harsh reality right now. We are still dependent on coal largely. I'll tell you the reason. The reason is even today, when you talk about solar, even today, the problem with the solar part is that how do you store solar energy? Because ultimately you have to store it, right? If you make solar energy in the morning, how do you use that in the night? You'll have to store that somewhere. There are still no inexpensive storage solutions. Storage of energy, renewable energy is still a big pain, especially for solar. Wind, etc. Also, that energy can be made at only few places. That is where coal becomes important. That is why fossil fuel coal is still something that the countries around the world, especially India, is dependent on. Until we find the solution to that, we are not going anywhere. Similarly, I just wanted to discuss about Quad as well, because at the G7 summit, there was also Quad summit that went on in the sidelines. The Quad summit also contributed or also discussed a lot about climate change as well. There were certain promises that were made amongst the different nations. Promises such as Quad Clean Energy Partnership will be set up. The four countries will help each other. Quad Green Shipping Network will be set up to help each other reduce the emission of shipping for transportation. Expanding cooperation on disaster risk management. These are just initiatives that the Quad nations have taken. Again, these are mostly on paper. This is not something that has been implemented so far. Those who don't know Quad, there are four members of Quad. I don't know why you don't know this. Quad is India, USA, Japan, and Australia. These are the Quad members, group of four of these. G7, also a bit of information about that. It started in 1975. It was G8, Russia moved out. The other G7 countries are UK, Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, and the US. Please remember, China is not a part of it. Also, the G7 doesn't have its own secretariat or any office as such. By rotation, whichever country becomes the president, they hold the meeting of G7. So, since Japan is the president, Japan held the meeting. But it's not that they will always have an office or any secretariat as such. G7 does not have that. Do remember that. This is a kind of question that you can expect. The G7 nations have failed to exhibit leadership in the fight against climate change. Do you agree? Give arguments to support your answer. Okay, let me take up a few comments. Shagun is saying, can't a criminal be saved from the arrest due to anticipatory bail? Isn't it like a threat? So, Shagun, it's not that randomly the bail is given. The bail will be given only after the court has reasons to believe that you are not a criminal. So, don't worry. At least on paper, it's not a threat. In reality, no one knows. Sudha is saying, what's the benefit for Germany to pay South Africa to not use coal? So that's, see, when you become a rich nation, when you become a developed nation, you take responsibility for the entire world. Environment of the world is connected. It's not that environment at one place will be dirty, other place will always be fine. It's part of one single world. Developed countries should and have taken responsibility in certain cases to help the other countries. That is what Germany did with South Africa. Sakshi is saying, is there any contribution of carbon credits of India in its emergence as a growing economy? No, Sakshi, not really, because it has not really been binding as such. Then I have a question from Ilma. Although G7 is a group of developed and developing countries, no, only developed countries, and more tilted towards economic decision, it is not a group to combat climate change like UNFCCC. So, can the G7 compel to make respective commitment? I I see G7 or no group can compel anyone to take any decision. They can just give out certain statements. As simple as that. That's what they are doing. No one can compel any other country to take any decision. We are all a sovereign country. Kunal is saying, what is the scenario? Can India become a part of G7, make it G8 again? Again, eighth country was never India. So it's not about India entering, it will again become G8. That's not the case. Can India become member of this? I don't know. I don't know the future. Maybe. Anupam is saying, does it really matter what G7 want from other countries? Our relationship with them will be damaged if we don't follow them. No, Anupam. See, it's not that we have to follow everything everyone says in order to have a good relationship. It's not how it works. They have just said that they want the world to do this, but again, if that is the case, the US and G7 don't want anyone to buy oil from Russia, but we have been buying oil from Russia. That's where diplomacy comes in. So it's not that we have to follow everything that they say. They just made their statement. They want the world to be like this. If anyone can accept, it will. As simple as that. Akshat is saying, tell me how to write this answer, what to include. So, Akshat, in this case, you will have to mainly focus on lack of finances. You'll have to focus on lack of finances. You have to focus on how in the Ukraine-Russia war, after that, a lot of the European countries also started shifting to fossil fuels, etc. They have not been making binding commitments. This is what you have to write here. Anjali is saying in answer writing will always be positive is important. No, Anjali, it's not that you'll always have to be positive. You can give points on both the arguments. It's not that you have to take only one single side. Then Mithun is saying yesterday news came that these countries also invest more in green energy. So Mithun, I'm not sure what your question is in that. If the news came in good, happy for them. Then Rashida has a very long question. Okay. The challenging part is now to actually implement. There are many challenges to the first. Sorry. Sorry. Yeah, there are many challenges to the first insufficient action, inconsistency, whatever promises the countries make. Um, for example, you have made a promise. India will go net zero by 2070. These are not binding. If you don't do anything, will happen. There's no charge on you, so the teaser is not binding. SME, if you can send me questions and not long comments, I'll be really happy because I'm not sure what I do and read those comments. Just tell me there's a question because statements, I'm not sure. Yes, Rashida, whatever you say, I agree with you. Good. Next, let me take some questions. Shagun is saying why court took back his 26 April judgment. Instead, could have asked the police to file the charge sheet within 60 days. Shagun, the court thought that ED has a good view on this. The ED said that in complex cases, we might need more time than this, so you should allow this. Then I have a question. Yes, Ilma, you can take a balanced approach. Sahil is saying, how only discuss climate change, no other issues in this summit? Why? Sahil, I can't tell you why the G7 did not discuss any other issues. I wish I knew what the G7 is discussing. I don't have I don't have the privacy or I don't have the right to know what is in their mind. So the G7 decides what they want to discuss. I can't tell you why and how. Then I have a question by Nitesh. As Supreme Court reversed its order, can a person get bail if the police fails to file charge sheet in time? Guys, the court will decide if you get the bail or not. I will not decide, you will not decide, no one will decide. So the court will decide. Let the case go there and then the court decide. So that's the only thing that I can say. The court decides on a case to case basis. The only thing that happened was the Supreme Court said to the courts that now you don't have to give them default bail automatically because the charge sheet has not been filed. The court only said even if the charge sheet has not been filed within time, the court should still look into the case. Are there enough reasons why charge sheet was not filed? And then decide on the bail, as simple as that. Okay, let's go ahead then. The next topic that we have taken up, that was again in the news, is something called the recusal of judges. Now, what exactly do you mean by the recusal of judges? Let's try and understand. So, basically, in simple terms, let's assume there is a case that goes in the Supreme Court. Now, in the Supreme Court, as you know, there are a total of 34 judges. As you know, there are a total of 34 judges in the Supreme Court. Now, which judge hears which case? It is decided by the Chief Justice of India. So Chief Justice of India decides and allocates the case. Now let's assume for an example, the Chief Justice of India has named 5 judges to hear a certain case. Now, out of these 5 judges, it may happen that one of them is related to a person on whom the case is being filed. It may happen. The judges are also humans, they might have certain relations. So let's say one of the judges of the 5 is in relation to the person against whom the case has been filed. This Supreme Court judge can say that I will not hear this case. I am withdrawing myself from the case. This is called recusal of judges. Recusal means withdrawal. So if, let's say, a judge says that we or I don't want to hear this case, I don't want to hear this matter. Why? Because I'm related to this case. I will be biased. I am not neutral in this case. I am taking my name back. This is called recusal of judges. Recusal means when the judge withdraws himself or herself, that I don't want to hear the case. Now, what has happened? Why is it in the news? The specific case is not important for you, but I'll tell you what has happened. What has happened is there is a case going on against IPS officer Sanjeev Bhatt about a person who was killed in the police custody. This case is going on in the Supreme Court. This IPS officer has filed an appeal that one of the judges hearing his case should recuse, meaning that, in simple terms, the person against whom the case has been filed, he has applied to the court saying that I want one of the judges to be changed in the case. Why? His argument is that when the case was in the High Court, at that time, this judge was also in the High Court and he decided the case against me. Let me repeat. The person against whom the case has been filed in the Supreme Court has filed a case or has filed a petition in the court. He wants one of the judges to not hear this case. Why? He says that when the same case was going on in the High Court, this judge was a High Court judge and he decided the case against me. So this judge already in his mind has made up the case against me. I don't want this judge to be hearing the case in the Supreme Court. This is what has happened. Supreme Court has said that no, you cannot tell us which judge will hear the case or not. The Supreme Court has said that the person against whom the case has been filed, they cannot demand that I want this judge, I want that judge, etc. No. It is either the judge himself or herself that will recuse from the case, or the Chief Justice of India will decide which judge will hear which case. But if I have filed a case in the Supreme Court, I cannot decide which judge will hear the case, which judge will not hear the case. Recusal of judges doesn't happen just because the person wants specific judges in this case. And this is not the first instance. Recusal of judges is a very common occurrence, and it's not just in India. Even outside India, the recusal of judges part is pretty common. In India, in the Rahul Gandhi case also, there were certain judges, let's say in Gujarat High Court, there were certain judges that recused, saying that no, I will not hear the case. The interesting part is if the judge recuses, for example, the judge says that no, I will not hear the case. In that case, it is not necessary that the judge has to give a reason for that. It's not necessary that the judge has to give a reason for that. The judge may recuse without giving any reason, and this is what happened in this case also. The judge might say that I'm just recusing because I don't want to hear the case. It's not specific that a reason has to be given. Now, there is no law in India specifically about the recusal of judges. Please remember that. There is no law in India that says what is a procedure of recusal, what are the circumstances for recusal of judges. There is no such law. There is a convention that has developed. For example, when there's a conflict of interest, the judge will withdraw from the case. If the judge thinks that they will be biased, they can withdraw from the case. Also, another reason is this. This is the reason why Mr. Sanjeev Bhatt wants the case to be removed or wants the judge to be removed. If a specific judge was a part of this case in the High Court and the judge has now come to the Supreme Court and the case again comes to Supreme Court, then again usually the judge actually removes himself from the case. This is a convention, not a law. The difference between convention and a law is law has to be followed always. Convention doesn't always have to be followed. This is what Mr. Sanjeev Bhatt is saying, that the same judge ruled against me in the High Court. Now the case has come to Supreme Court. If he again hears it, he will automatically remove or he will automatically rule against me. This is usually a convention that the judge that decided over the same case in the lower court will recuse himself, but that has not happened in this case. In this case, a judge has not recused. Now, usually there are two types of recusals: automatic recusal, when the judge itself, himself or herself, withdraws from the case. Second, when a party raises the plea for recusal, highlighting the personal interest, then again, in that case, the chief justice of the court will have to take the decision. At the end of the day, the discretion of the judge will decide, and the chief justice will decide which judge will hear the case, which judge will not hear the case. Again, you cannot demand that this is the judge that I want the case with, this is the judge I do not want the case with. This depends on the chief justice. The person can just argue or can just present facts that this person is related to me or against me. As I said, India has no codified rules for this. There are some Supreme Court judgments that talk about this, but there are no rules for this as such. The judges recuse themselves for multiple reasons. It's not necessary that they have to give reasons. They can just recuse themselves without giving any reason as well. This is not a compulsion on them that they have to hear the case. They don't really make the reason public. That is also allowed. Absolutely fine. Usually, these are the rules made by the Supreme Court in this regard. For example, in 1987, Supreme Court said that to determine if a judge should recuse or not, we should look at the reasonableness of the apprehension of bias in the mind of the concerned party. Meaning that to decide whether a judge should recuse or not, we should first see whether the party or against whom the case is being heard, whether they think or what reasons do they have to believe that the judge will be biased. So we look at the reasons first and then take a call. The Supreme Court also in 2015 said, where a judge has pecuniary interest, no further inquiry is needed whether there was a real danger of bias. Any idea what is pecuniary interest? Have you heard of this? Any idea what do you mean by pecuniary interest? Yes, in simple terms, it means financial. In simple terms, it means financial. So basically, if you have a financial interest, if you have money related interest in that case, then the judge should not hear the case. There is no other reason needed for that. In 2019, the Supreme Court said that any decision in a similar combination is not disqualified from being a part of larger bench to which a reference is being made. Meaning that if, let's say, a 3-judge bench heard a particular case, now the case is being heard by a 5-judge bench. In 2019, Supreme Court said these 3 judges can be a part of the larger bench as well. Meaning that if in smaller bench, lesser number of judges have given a decision, the same case is being heard by a larger bench, that doesn't automatically mean that the smaller bench judges will not hear that case again. They can hear that case again. They are not disqualified automatically unless they have their own pecuniary or any other interest. Although India doesn't have a law on recusal of judges, some other countries do. USA, for example, has a law. They have a law called Title 28 of US Code. It talks about disqualification of judges, justice, magistrate, judge, etc. Also, UK has a certain law when it comes to how the judges should be removed or should be recused. In India, we do not have any law on that so far. We depend on the judges only to accept that yes, they are biased in a certain manner or they are related to a certain manner. In that case only, we will have a situation where the judge will be recused. Otherwise, it will not happen. But in these cases, In US and UK, they do have a law in this regard. This is a question for your practice. Recusal of judges in India is based more on the judge's intention rather than a well defined law. In view of this statement, analyze whether there is a need to have well framed laws for the recusal of judges in India. We have discussed enough data for this for you to answer this question. Let me take some comments. Terry is saying, isn't Registrar General assess which judge will get which case? No, Registrar General doesn't do that. Master of the roster means who decides who will take which case is the Chief Justice, not the Registrar General. Registrar General just keeps a track of the cases. Then I have a question from Ilma. This is not a ground for asking for recusal of judges. If this happens, every petitioner will come and the same judgment will be against him. Yes. SME, as I said, please don't give just statements to me. If there's a question, then refer it to me. If there's just a common statement, I'm not sure what to do with that apart from just reading it out. Shilpa and Anil have a similar question. What should the Supreme Court do if all judges recusal from hearing a case? Not happened till now. If it does happen, I'll let you know. But hasn't happened so far. So once this does happen, I'll let you know. Jaya is saying if executive don't have any if don't take any FIR seriously, make delay, what action can be taken against it? So Jaya, if FIRs etc. are not taken seriously or not being heard, usually in practical cases, what you do is you go to social media etc. But now what has happened is you can go online, make RTI file RTIs as well. You can also have complaints filed to Lokpal also in such cases these days. All of this can be done online. Ayushi is saying, will the process of recusal not slow down the justice process? Because in a huge country like India, there are high chances numerous judges will not be okay dealing with the case. Are the judges placed in a bench proceeds with five? No, Ayushi. If a judge recuses, some other judge is appointed in that case. See, you have to understand, no situation is an ideal situation. So when you say recusal will slow down the justice process, my question would be, what is the alternate to it? Would you want a judge who is party to a case to hear the case? You would not want that to happen, right? So there has to be a middle ground found between the two. So far, we have not had a situation where so many judges recuse. Maybe if we have a situation where many judges, as you are expecting, will recuse, then maybe there will be a law formed. The reason why maybe we don't have a law is that the problem is not as big as you're imagining it to be. That can be a case, right? So let's not imagine a big problem where there is none. If it does happen, then maybe. Then Nitesh is saying, as in UK, there is jury method to decide accused or not. What is the meaning of recusal of judges? See, even when there is a jury method, first jury method doesn't apply to all the cases. There are certain cases where jury method will not apply. Jury method usually applies in those criminal cases. Constitutional cases, etc., it doesn't apply. This is where the judges come in. Then I have a question from Akash. In the slides, due process of law is mentioned. Please explain how the recusal of judges is due process of law. So again, due process of law means the law has to be followed properly. That includes that the person who is related to the case should not hear the case. This is one of the principles of natural justice. That if you're a party to the case, if you're related to the case in any manner, then you should not hear the case. So proper implementation of the law will be the due process of law. Those who came in the last 10 minutes, welcome to the class. I wish you had come in earlier and you're asking what is recusal. Recusal means withdrawal of the judges from a case. Then I have a question from Misbah. Explain the introduction for this. Introduction for this, you can define what is recusal of judges. That can be a good definition for this. You can define why is it in the news. You can define if there's a specific famous case in the news where recusal has happened. Any of these can be a good introduction. Then I have a question from Kishan. In case when Chief Justice of India itself is a violator, in that case, who is allocating the bench? Who will hear? and if it is decided by Chief Justice of India, then it is not a violation of principle of natural justice. Again, it has happened in case of Justice Deepak Mishra. When Justice Deepak Mishra was the Chief Justice of India, there was a case which was indirectly related to him. And in that case, there were questions about how the Chief Justice of India can hear a case himself or can decide a bench. But again, it was decided that the Chief Justice of India is the master of the roster. Again, as I said, this is not an ideal situation, but even right now, Chief Justice of India is the master of the roster. The Chief Justice of India, in short, decides who will hear which case. So there have been protests against it, but that is what the law is, and I can only tell you this much. Gopal is saying, if any judge is not justiciable in this condition, what do we do? As I said to earlier as well, I'm not sure if you're hearing my answers. Guys, apart from hearing your own answer to your question, please hear answers to other questions as well, because that will be the same as yours. So it will save your time as well. As I said earlier, so far the situation has not come where all the judges recuse. If it comes, we'll have to see what happens then. Then Monica is saying recusal of Chief Justice of India possible? Yes, absolutely possible. Why not? Recusal of a judge can happen. Chief Justice of India is also a judge. Simple. Let's move ahead then. The last two articles that we have is a summarized version of the Kurukshetra magazine and of the Yojana magazine. So the first starting point will be the Kurukshetra magazine. The Kurukshetra magazine, the last edition that had, was based on rural crafts for livelihood. Now, I'm sure this is not something that is very complex to understand. The government of India has been trying to increase employment opportunities in the country, both in the urban and in the rural areas. One of the ways in which the government thinks that we can increase employment in rural areas is through rural crafts, handicrafts, etc. Because the government thinks that rural prosperity can come in through that. Now, the interesting part is, apart from just giving livelihood to people through agriculture, the government is hoping to have some alternate methods of employment. You all would know, and if you don't know, then I'll tell you. The problem with agriculture is, although agriculture employs a huge workforce of India, but the contribution of agriculture in our GDP is not that high. The problem is the contribution of agriculture, how much it has been contributing to our GDP, is not as high as it should have been. However, the number of people who work in agriculture are much, much higher. What it means is agriculture is suffering from a problem of disguised unemployment. I hope all of you have heard of this term, disguised unemployment. Have you heard of this? Those who don't know what is disguised unemployment, basically the problem here is, if 20 people are working on a job, you remove 10, remaining 10 work, they will work in exactly the same manner. There will be nothing that will change. Even 10 can do the same thing as 20 are doing. That is called disguised unemployment. This is a big problem in agriculture in India. So government wants to take those people, the extra labor, away from agriculture and utilize them somewhere else. This is where handicraft has come into picture. Now, handicraft again has a lot of important pointers. It has a lot of potential in India. For example, it helps in cultural preservation. You go to these villages where they have conserved their own craft, the types of sarees they make, the types of toys they make, the types of handicraft they make. They are just making sure that they go ahead and take their own culture forward. I'll give you an example, a personal example where I have been. If you are from Odisha, you would know, when you are in Odisha, you go from Bhubaneswar to Puri. In between, there is a village which is the art village. If I remember correctly, I think Raghurajpur was the name. I'm sorry if I'm not giving the correct name. Raghurajpur, I think, is the name, or something similar to this. Something similar to this. You go from Bhubaneswar to Puri, there's an art village that you will find. Raghurajpur, something like that is the name of the village. It's a pretty small village. You go there, there are so many artists working from home, selling their paintings and It's actually the art form that they have preserved over the years, painting on certain leaves, paintings on certain crafts. So again, all of that, and since I've been there many years back, so I remember that it's a way of how you conserve your culture. Again, if my if the name of the village is wrong, I'm very sorry, but I think it's Raghurajpur, if I remember correctly. It may be something else, I think, related to Raghurajpur. Then there is economic development aspect to it. As I said, the government of India is trying to move people away from agriculture, not to decrease our agricultural output, but because the government also knows agriculture doesn't require as many people as are working right now there. That is why the government of India want the people to go towards the other places. We have the one district, one product program, under which the government is kind of allocated a certain product to every district, that this can be your specialty, you can work towards it, your district can be famous for something like that. For example, yes, a lot of people have confirmed it's Raghurajpur. Thank you so much. So there are certain places they are famous for their one product. It can be something that you eat, it can be something that you wear, it can be something that you use. That can also be the USP of that place. Government is also trying to make it more sustainable, more environmental friendly, and the biggest point is it will prevent rural urban migration. See, rural urban migration is a huge problem in India. As I've said multiple times earlier, and I'll repeat this once again, the problem with India is our cities were never built to handle such heavy population burden. And I've said this earlier in many classes, I'll repeat this here once again. The problem with India is if you ask anyone in India, where do you see that can you find a good private sector job, good standard of living, where you want to settle down? The problem is there are maximum 8 9 cities in India where there are good jobs available in private sector, and there's nothing else. The problem here is if everyone goes to those cities only, the population burden will be too much. Delhi is about to cross 3 crore population mark. 3 crore, just imagine that. Bangalore on its way to 2 crores very easily. Mumbai also over 2 crores. These cities were never made to have such population burden. With this, the infrastructure will always go bad. There will always be flooding. People are not living in proper condition. There's no sanitation, slums, etc. come in. All these are because of the rural urban migration. The problem here with rural urban migration is that again, when people in the rural areas don't have enough opportunities, they will move to the urban areas. And that this creates a huge population burden on the urban areas. The other problem is when entire families move, this brings even more problems. You saw what happened when the COVID-19 lockdown was imposed suddenly by the government. Thousands and thousands of people in the toughest days of their lives, they had to walk thousands of kilometers just to go back to their villages. If rural urban migration is, I won't say stopped, but if rural urban migration is at least reduced by giving a push to rural crafts, it will be much better for rural areas and for the urban areas both. There are certain government initiatives in this regard. I already discussed the one district, one product, giving one product to every district, asking them to master that product. Second, linking textile with tourism. Now, again, when you tour or when you go different places, you want to buy things of those areas which are indigenous to those places, crafts, textile, all of that is something that can give much bigger boost to economic activity in that village. There are some examples. For example, there are Pochampally Handloom Park that has been established in Telangana. It's again a tourist attraction where you will see a lot of different types of historical handloom prints that are still being made. There's Ekta Mall in Gujarat, again an example where local artisans can showcase their craft. We also have the PM Vishwakarma Kaushal Samman. This is a kind of a government initiative for traditional arts and craft to promote their activity, to promote their activity throughout the entire country so that people can buy more products. We also have global recognition trade fairs organized by the government. Many places you will see government exhibitions, etc. They happen in bigger cities. For example, in Delhi, it's a very common thing. Every few rural craftsmen are invited to showcase their products. Because see, the problem is, and you have to understand something, the problem with rural arts is you make something in rural areas, but the problem is you want to sell it in the urban areas. Why? The rural areas, when you sell it, you don't have a lot of people who can give you a good price for it. You will agree to this, right? The rural areas would make something, but they want higher price for that. That earning capacity, that buying capacity is only in the urban areas. So this is the disconnect. You have to either bring people from cities into the villages to buy those products, or you have to bring those products from villages to the city so that they can see and they can buy. Unless these two linkages happen, the people will not buy it. So either you bring in people in the name of tourism to villages, or you organize these exhibitions so that these crafts artisans can go to the cities. The government has selected 8 craft villages under their tourism initiative. Yeah, this is the Raghurajpur village I was talking about. Raghurajpur, Tirupati, Vadaj, Naini. There are these 8 of the villages selected by the government of India. They want to link tourism initiatives with these villages, invite more and more tourists to these places. Now, as I said, the biggest problem that will be solved if rural crafts are given a push is the migration issue. There will be enough employment opportunities in the rural areas, so there will be no need of employment, no need of migration for employment. Entrepreneurship will be fostered as more and more people engage in this. Rather than asking for a job, they will be able to provide job to the other people. It will attract tourism because people these days want to see old culture that has been preserved. Not just national but international tourists also, while coming into the country, would want to visit these areas. It will also help in income diversification. Again, income diversification would be that when someone lives in the rural areas, it is expected that they would be engaged in agriculture in some form or the other. Apart from agriculture, this will be an additional added income for them. So this is why the government believes that if all these things are done properly, maybe we will be able to curb migration in large numbers from the rural to the urban areas. What else can the government do? Enhance their skill, give them more training to compete with other products in the market, improve their market access. As I said, the problem is the buyers are in the cities and the sellers are in the villages. So you have to connect them, you have to bring them to the market. Create more financial support, like if they want loans, etc., they should be readily available to them. Strengthen infrastructure. Now, strengthen infrastructure can be in a lot of ways. For example, providing water, electricity 24/7 to the villages, to the artists, building better roads so that if a tourist wants to go to a certain village, if a tourist has a very hard time in reaching the village, the tourist will tell his friends, no, no, don't go there because you will not be able to reach. On the other hand, if you develop better infrastructure, if the tourist can reach the village easily, he or she will then tell others also to come, right? So you have to build infrastructure. You have to protect intellectual property so that these things should not be copied and remade time and time again. And you should also, government should also help them with branding and promotion, because these days again a lot of people are looking for these cultural historical things, handmade handicrafts. If you can promote this, brand this properly, it can be a good way forward for the government. This is a practice question that you can have from this part. Giving a push to rural handicrafts in India can solve multiple issues, acting as a stumbling block to India's progress. Elaborate. Let me take up a few comments before I move on to the last topic for the day. Saurabh is saying, if a case is directly related to the judge and if he denies for recusal, what can the person do in such a case? Saurabh, again, the problem in this case, on paper, you can just file an appeal in the court, write a PIL maybe to the Chief Justice of India, because Chief Justice of India will take a call at the end. If it is against that person only, then obviously it will not be heard by him. Chief Justice of India will take care of that. But if it still happens, you have to appeal with the Chief Justice of India only. Ritu Singh is master of roaster, has no bona fide way to use it. I'm not sure, Ritu, what your question is. Master of the roaster is the Chief Justice of India. I'm not sure what you're asking. Vartika is saying, what is curb migration? Vartika, curb means to reduce. Migration means people going from one place to the other. So curb migration means to reduce migration of people from rural to the urban areas. Then I'll just have one suggestion for all of you. The one suggestion I have is, and I think I said this in the last webinar as well, please make sure you do not invent situations in your mind and complicate matters. A lot of people, when they start preparing for UPSC, have this problem that they start making situations in their own mind. What if everyone rescues? What if no judges in the entire country out of thousands of judges? What if everyone recuses? Then what will happen, sir? Sir, we will not have anyone. Then what will happen? Sir, if all the prisons are full, where will we keep the prisoner? Will we keep him open in the chains? These are just imaginative situations you are thinking to complicate yourself. This exam is not based on comic books that they will ask you such riddles that one was crossing the road, there was a blind man, what if the blind man sees and what doesn't cross the road. These assumptions that you are making, please don't go there, because there is no end to it. If you just keep assuming things, what will happen if this happens, what will happen if this happens, if it happens, we'll see. The UPSC will never ask a question starting with what if your question is what if, the question is wrong in itself. So please don't do that. There is anyways enough to study in the syllabus, and you're going out of the syllabus imagining things. UPSC is a difficult examination, but problem is people make it difficult by overthinking stuff. Sir, what if the president is signing on the bill and after half of the sign, the pen is over, the ink is over in the entire country, sir, there is no ink to sign on the bill, then what will the law be made? What will be the law? No, nothing. Don't imagine stuff. As simple as that. If you imagine riddles based on Nandan, Champak or comic books and think UPSC will ask those questions, no, it will not happen. So you should also not do that. Only when you have completed the entire syllabus, then you can start imagining stuff. That's usually called hallucination. You should not do that. Okay, I'll take one more question. Mithun is saying, is recusal not ensuring justice? No, recusal means that a certain judge is withdrawing from the case. As simple as that. This is in fact good on part of justice, right? Recusal means that I am biased to the case. I don't want to hear the case. For example, I'll give you a very simple example. Okay, let's assume that you reach the UPSC interview. Let's just take a very simple assumption that you reach the UPSC interview. Now, in the boards, if one of the member is your father, is it right or not? Just tell me. If one of the members in the UPSC interview board is your father, is it right? Should it happen? Should it not happen? It should not happen, right? So the person will recuse himself, as simple as that. You're just making it too complicated by thinking a lot of things. As simple as that, the person will recuse. The last topic that we have here is the potential of India's edtech sector. The reason why you met me in life and I met you in life, at least through chat. This is India's edtech sector. Now, edtech, as you know, made up of two words, education plus technology. So, in simple terms, getting education or giving education through the use of technology is edtech, as simple as that. Now, the government in the Yojana magazine has talked about the potential of the edtech sector, how can it actually help people, and how it has helped people. Now, in India specifically, edtech has a major role to play, and edtech has already played a major role. For example, the problem in India is there is not enough infrastructure, and also there are not enough teachers. The problem with physical teaching is that you need to have certain number of teachers to fulfill that. If a person, let's say there are 100 kids in the village and there is no teacher in the village or no teachers willing to go to the village, at least the person or the kid sitting in the village can still have their mobile phone and watch the same lecture online rather than having a physical presence of teachers there. So in India, especially when we don't have enough teachers, when we don't have enough infrastructure, edtech is like a boon for India specifically. I know it has its own drawbacks. I know it's dependent on a lot of technology. Technology is still not available all across the country. But you also would accept the fact that in the past few years, the growth of data in India, the growth of technology in India, the growth of mobile phones in India has increased at a very, very high speed. Every, even the person who comes to your house, a driver, a maid, a rickshaw puller, you will see all of them have some kind of mobile phones in their hand. I'm not saying all, but a lot of them have mobile phones in their hand because it has become much more affordable. The data prices have become much, much cheaper. Just imagine, I don't know how many of you would know this. Before Geo became this revolution thing, I don't know how many of you had a mobile phone before Geo came in. Before Geo came in, if you had Vodafone or Airtel, we used to have a recharge of 250 rupees for 1 GB per month. And trust me, we never watched any video or nothing. We just waited for the end of the month so that the data pack doesn't get expired. We were just looking for free Wi-Fi anyhow that we can get. And let's say today is the last day. For example, today the 30-day period is getting over. We used to get a message, you have 300 MB still left. So we used to just now watch YouTube videos so that we can make use of these 300 MB in the last few hours before the data pack expires. And now just imagine, this is the same rate now you're paying for 1 GB every single day, or even more than that. So again, this situation has changed, and obviously this has made it much, much, much easier for not just edtech but a lot of technology companies as well. Now, just imagine the Instagram reels that you see, the TikTok that you used to see earlier, all of that, it is possible because you have this cheap mobile data, which was not really the case earlier. In India, there are over 30 crore students in K-12. K-12 means KG to 12. That is called K-12. And 4 crore students in higher education. And again, because of the size of India, the area of India, the population, all of that makes India an ideal place to have edtech as a solution. Data infrastructure is improving, as we discussed. Both the government and the private sector working together in this. The smartphone users have increased. We have about 93 crore smartphone users in India. 93 crore. That's a huge, huge number. And this is just increasing because of the affordability of smartphones. The data rates are affordable, smartphone prices are decreasing, and the government itself also has started a lot of initiatives such as the Swayam, Diksha, etc. So government has also made sure that if you want to study online, and there are many options to even study online for free. For example, has anyone used Swayam here? Has anyone used Swayam? Have you heard of this at least? So it's a very interesting concept. I'll tell you what. So what happens is in Swayam, for example, you have many courses. The courses are free. The courses are free of cost. You can do whatever course that you want. If you want a certificate for that, then you have to pay some money, give the test or give the exam. You pass, you will get the certificate. But just for knowledge, if you want to do the course, it is absolutely free. So this is how it works, that you just go online, you do whatever course that you want. If you want a certificate for that to show to the world that I've done the course, then you pay a very small amount, you get the test done, you pass the test, and you get certificates. So all of this is government initiative in the field of edtech. The good part about edtech is it has reduced the divide between urban and rural. Let's look at this only. Let's look at the UPSC field only. A few years back, preparing for UPSC meant that you have no option, you have to go to Delhi. Just a few years back, the problem was you had no option, but you had to go to Delhi. There were just certain hubs. Now, you can stay wherever you want. You don't have to go anywhere if you choose to. If you choose to, you can still go to Delhi or other places. But now you have options. You can access wherever you want. You can travel. You can live in the most remotest of areas. Not a problem. You can watch whenever you want. Now, all of this has made sure that the divide between urban and rural that used to happen earlier, that has gone out of the window. Also, poverty as a differentiator has reduced. It makes learning much more interesting. You can do it at your own speed. All of these have been advantages of the edtech sector. And see, you are watching it from the student's point of view, right? From the teacher's point of view, if I tell you, for me also it's easier, right? For example, right now I'm here, tomorrow I can be in some other city, I just need a camera, I just need the internet, and I can teach from there. Third day I can be in some other city, I can teach for there. The only thing that I need is a camera and the internet connection. So it's happening on both sides, on both sides of the camera. On one side, when you have a situation where you can travel and do whatever you want, you can access the classes from wherever, and I can also teach from wherever. This is also a part of how edtech is improving. Not just this, edtech still have certain challenges. It's not the easiest way. Many people still resist to change. You would have all seen when the COVID-19 the crisis started and all the schools were shut down. Remember, all the school teachers were then forced to teach online. Many of these teachers who were not really used to technology, they did not have a easiest of time in adopting to Zoom and those kind of classes. And you would agree, many of you even laughed also when there were YouTube videos made on teachers who were having a hard time. They were not able to mute certain student, they were not able to see which student has named what. You all would have laughed on those YouTube videos and all those reels, but you have to understand, from the teacher's point of view, it is not that easy to adopt, especially if you are not in the younger age group. Also, technology infrastructure has to be updated. It's not that easy. The technology is still not accessible. There will be some glitches. For example, many of you say, sir, I'm not able to hear you, the video is breaking, the voice is breaking. I keep on getting these messages, right? So obviously there will be some problems with technology. There is also insufficient skill set. Not many people would know in India, for example, how to make these softwares, how to make these platforms where these classes can be conducted. Low adoption rate. Not everyone is open to learning online. A lot of people still say, no, I don't want to learn online. All these are still challenges that remain. And still, edtech is not something that can be seen as a solution to all the problems. It's a way forward to improve India's situation in the education sector. It's not the end goal, or it's not the end solution to everything. What is the way forward? Continue investing more, improve the digital infrastructure from both private and the government sector. Data literacy skills have to be promoted both in the children and in the adults. The adults who have to adopt it and the children who have to accept this. Collaborate with other stakeholders means government and private sector should collaborate. Other companies who are working in this field should collaborate. Teacher training and support should happen. Train the teachers better of how to or how to challenge or how to make sure that they are able to adopt these kind of technologies. Ensure data privacy and security. This is also important. People watching things online, all of this always has a problem of data security, privacy, whether or not you're able to protect the data. Promote the research also, so that we can know what exactly is the effectiveness of edtech, so that it can be implemented in the long run. All these are the things that the government should do in the coming years. This is a kind of practice question. A combination of education and technology may end India's significant learning divide between the rural and urban India. Do you agree? Elaborate. And this brings us to the end of today's session. I will take a few questions for the last few minutes before we end this session. Namita, you can. Namita is asking, while practicing answer writing, can be referred to internet, mention some facts. See, Namita, you can, but my only point is, for example, let's say while practicing answer writing, you refer to internet, get some facts, write in your answer. Great. But it will not be of any use if you don't remember those facts for the UPSC mains exam. Because the purpose is not just writing a great exam with the help of internet while practicing, right? The purpose will be to write the paper or write a great answer in the UPSC exam. So if you think by taking info from the internet you can write a good answer right now, and you can replicate the same in the mains answer writing, please go ahead. But again, if you're doing it just for the practicing part and you will not be able to remember later, then it will not make much sense. Khushbu, this is the last slide. Then I have a question. Can we draw a map in any question if we are mentioning places? If you are that good in drawing, please go ahead. I am not that good in drawing, so I never thought like that. But if you are that good in drawing, please go ahead. Please make a map. Anything to make your answer stand out is appreciated. The point is, I will tell you from my own experience, in the mains exam, you will not get a lot of time to make flowcharts and maps, etc. Prashant is saying Chief Justice of India reversing the judgment related default bail. Please understand, Chief Justice of India has not reversed the judgment. The Supreme Court reverses the judgment, not the Chief Justice of India. So the language has to be made better. Okay, so Prashant saying Chief Justice of India reversing the judgment regarding default bail. Isn't it violation of judicial working since the Chief Justice of India gave the decision in his discretion? No, the Chief Justice of India does not give the individual decision. As far as the Supreme Court is concerned, Supreme Court has the right and the power to review their own judgments. So they can do that. Simple. Misbah is saying, should we write answer hand to hand after listening video or retain our mind for 2-3 days and then write? Misbah, entirely up to you. Whatever you think is a better way for you. Kapil is saying president is the first amongst equal. No, Kapil. No. This was a statement used for the prime minister earlier, that prime minister is the first amongst equals in the council of ministers. Even that is not true now. That used to be earlier. Earlier, when I say earlier, I mean to say at the time of Jawaharlal Nehru. When Jawaharlal Nehru was the prime minister, because he had Vallabhbhai Patel in his cabinet, it was assumed that he has the same stature as Jawaharlal Nehru. So at that time, we assume prime minister is the first amongst equal. But after that, we don't really say this. Prime minister is usually much above. Sujit, cost crunching means to try and reduce the cost. Dhyana is saying, can we write short words like e.g. or and? See, example, writing e.g. in place of example, yes, but writing this in place of this, how many seconds will you save? I don't know. If you think you will save a few seconds that will give you good marks, please go ahead, but my suggestion would be not really. See, when you go with short forms, the entire idea is it should save you time. I'm not sure how much time will these short forms save you. Shagun is saying, why is this topic of potential of India's ethics sector in the news and in the magazine? So, Shagun, these Yojana Kurukshetra magazines don't really discuss the topics that are in the news immediately. Yojana Kurukshetra magazine are just magazines based on certain themes that are important for the country. Yojana Kurukshetra will not discuss topics that are right now in the news, so don't think about that. You're welcome, Akash. Okay, perfect. This brings us to the end of today's session. Thank you so much for joining in. Please make it a point to try and write certain answers. Be well prepared for the upcoming mains answer writing test series as well. That will be extremely helpful for all of you. As I said in the very beginning, I'll repeat this once again. Doesn't matter how your prelims went, please make sure you continue with your preparation. It's just a matter of about 2 more weeks. The result will come in just a couple of weeks for the prelims. At least carry on your preparation till then and take a call after that. Thank you so much. I'll see you soon in one of the next classes. Bye bye. Have a good day. Jai Hind.